So the theoretical basis for the method is called the theory of the psychology of the cells. And this method was developed by Helen Sutter Stone in the 70s. And it's a method that did not develop through pathology. It developed through love for each other. They were determined to make their marriage work. And they were both psychologists. And it started, they went all over the world, it spread all over the world. A lot of people are practicing it. And it is what makes it very difficult, very different from other psychological models, is that it's not a way to go in to find what is wrong. Because most of the way that therapists are trained is to go and fix people. This method does not see it at all like that. It sees it as, instead of let's go and see what is wrong, let's go and see what is. And it stops there. So it really approaches the personality as where is the main imbalance here? And that's where the suffering comes. So this is a tiny little bit about the history of the theory. So the basic premise is that the psyche is made up of different parts. That is not one unit. The psyche is, now every single part, it's like a different person. So when we're talking about multi-personality disorder, that's when there are different parts, that one part does not remember what the other part is doing, that it was present, that is existing. This method, the theory, states that there are very many, I'm talking hundreds of different parts in our personality. And each part is highly independent unit. Meaning, each part has its own beliefs, its own values, its own way of expressing itself. So some of you have seen me in my pajamas today, in my driving, and that the part that drives is very different than the part is in front of you right now presenting. So the part that was with your children this morning, let's say, the mother was very different than who's sitting here as a professional, taking in this. So each part has its own psychophysiological experience. Each part has its own history. So, a part of you remembers your childhood, and it's very happy. Remembers the parents and how wonderful they were, and then another part remembers, no, that was not such a great experience. I think I would start actually with how they see the personality developing. Let's start with that because the selves will make more sense. So you don't have this in your handouts. I don't want you to look at your handouts. You don't have this in your handouts. So the personality develops. It's not necessary to just to get the visual idea. So according to the stones, we come in this lifetime with what they call the psychic fingerprint. So this is a part of us that is pure vibration. So as I'm looking at you in this room, each person without knowing you at all, when I look at you, is a different vibration than when I look at you. I don't have to say, you don't have to say anything, I don't have to say anything, but just looking, that's the psychic fingerprint. Each person comes with a unique vibration, completely unique. And I'm not going to go into the history about how that comes, but in this lifetime we have a unique vibration, and they call it psychic fingerprint. Then all you have to see is infants, the vulnerability of the infants. So we come in this lifetime with a psychic fingerprint and completely vulnerable. Now, vulnerable in this, in their idea is not. You see, whenever I say vulnerability, what comes to mind when you think about vulnerability? What comes to mind?
Weakness.
Weakness. That's right. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Vulnerability equals weakness. In their presentation, vulnerability is not weakness. Vulnerability is the state of being undefended, of being open, of being receptive, which has nothing to do with weakness at all. It has to do, you see, it has to do with sensitivity. So in order to experience beauty, you need to have vulnerability. You have to be open to your vulnerability to even notice beauty. Now, vulnerability also carries fears, it carries anxiety, it carries pain. So in that place, so here we are born with our unique vibration and completely vulnerable, right? We're completely open. So then, in order, and this is a key, if you remember nothing else from today, remember this, a key reason that the selves, the different parts of us develop is to protect vulnerability. Because people who identify with vulnerability are those people that are victims to life. I'm sure you met some people that is one after the other, bad things keep happening to them. It's like they were raped and then they can't find a job and then they lost their money, and it's just they don't have claws. You need claws to survive in life. You don't have claws, you've been eaten up and spitted out. So if people after we're very vulnerable, we're very open, and what happens, we start, depending on, of course, genetic predisposition, family, culture, era, country, we develop different parts. We are born with all the possibility of developing different personality, different parts. Meaning, what do I mean? A part, and these are called primary cells. So these cells develop, like I said, to protect vulnerability. A self might develop, for example, one self that we all develop in order to survive is called the pleaser. A pleaser is I scan the room here and I kind of read what will make you happy. And if I see what will make you happy, I will provide it to make you happy. We all develop that. We all develop the sensitivity to see what will make our parents happy. If I cry harder, would I get fed faster? Or if I smile more, will I get fed faster? So gradually, the pleaser is one of the first parts of the personality that develops to survive. So these parts, so another part, let's say the independent. So here I am, I left Cyprus when I was very, very young, like a teenager, and I go to the States. So here, you know how it is, the mother does everything, blah, 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 you don't have to worry about anything. Go to the States with my family, and my father decided to come back. My mother didn't speak English, and I have a younger sister. So overnight, I had to develop independent. I had to become the head of the family. So that part of my personality was necessary for survival. Is it becoming a bit more clear? Okay, so what the main dominant part of our personality had a very good reason in developing to help us survive. Otherwise, we wouldn't have made it. Now, in the process of having to become independent, depending on myself, I didn't have anybody else to depend on. I had no other choice. And becoming, I do everything by myself and all that. What the opposite of that, whatever you develop, the opposite of that has to go under. So what's the opposite of independent? Dependent, needy, right? So, what's the consequence when I am this independent, I can do everything by myself, I don't need your help, I don't need anything? And then the needy goes to the subconscious. I am not aware of the needy part of me. It's still part of me. Because as human beings, we possess all the germs of humanity. We are capable of everything. So what helped and what was important for us to survive starts to develop. It's like a muscle. You know, when you exercise and you start exercising a muscle and it grows, and if you don't exercise a muscle, it atrophies. That's how it happens. So whatever helped starts to develop and become the dominant part. When that goes, the opposite goes under, needy, what's the consequence? The consequence is, if you come in my office, and this actually did happen, whenever I will get needy clients, I couldn't stand them. Whenever I will see a needy, especially women, whenever I see a needy woman, oh, I can't do this, how you do this, or can you do this for my, can you do this for, I couldn't stand them. Not that dislike, I couldn't stand, I couldn't be next to them. So that's the consequence of if you develop a self and you are not aware of it. That's the key. If you're not aware of your primary self, the part that developed for very good reasons, another part. Let's say I develop a part that is intellectual, rational. Everything has to make sense, has to be numbers that add up. So if I develop this part, you see this, when they develop the primary selves, we believe this is who we are. So if I say, if you ask Emily, because she's a very good friend of mine, so you ask Emily, tell me about Yolanda. She will describe me to you using my primary self, right? She will say, oh, she's in dynamic, right? You will say that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you, dynamic, independent, strong, you would say that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Right? So what does that
I would say some other things as well.
So what went under? The opposite of all that went under. And I'm not aware of it. So if intellectual, rational, you had to develop that. For whatever reason, again, genetic predisposition, but also family. What was the primary self of your family? Every family has a primary self, by the way. Every country has a primary self. Right? What's the primary self of the States? What's the primary self of the States? Come on. When you think of America, what do you think? What are they like? Huh? Arrogant, loud,
busy, 24/7 work,
excellent,
Shallow.
pressure.
pushers. Yeah. So the way you describe the Americans are arrogant, loud, pushers. Everything has to be bigger, better, all the time. So the main primary self is the pusher energy. Pushes. You finish with this, you don't take a breath, boom, you start with the next task or project. So full of projects. And all I have to do is speak with you for 5 minutes, I know what's your primary self. How? If I listen. Most people, we don't listen, you know that, right? You know nobody listens, right? Do you know that?
Yes.
Therapists don't listen. At least the therapists I've been working with. Me too. A lot of times, it's too many things happening. So if a client comes and they are needy, and my primary self is independent, right? What do you think my goal would be for that client?
To make her independent.
That's right. That's right. My treatment plan will be, how can I help this needy poor person become independent? But that comes from my primary self. I didn't listen a thing. of what they need. You see, the primary self takes over because it carries what is important and it defines us. We think this is who we are. So if I'm intellectual, what goes under?
Emotions.
Emotions. Emotional becomes, boom, cut off for a very good reason. So you see, okay, so let's go to needy. Let's go to dependent. What is a gift, a great gift in having independent as a primary self?
The strength that you feel.
Huh?
The strength that you feel.
The
from
strength,
your
the
independence.
strength. So independent is strong, yeah? What else?
Confident.
Confidence. You do things by yourself, you can accomplish things, right? Okay. What is a limitation in being independent?
Maybe loneliness, sometimes.
Right on.
Solitude.
What else?
Connecting with other people.
That's right. Well, whenever you are only identifying with a primary self, doesn't matter who it is, there's no connection with another person. There's connection with, talking, but there's no connection with another person. We'll talk about that later. So, so what is a gift in being needy? The greatest gift in being needy.
It's more likely to get your needs met.
Care.
Yeah.
You bet.
Many people are around you.
Right on. You get many helpers. You get many helpers. All of a sudden, you have people ready and willing to do things for you. You see? What's a limitation in being needy?
People get bored of you.
You don't have much to contribute.
Oh, you get people around you for the wrong reason.
Okay, because you need them and what you want from them. Okay, so what is a gift in being emotional as your primary self? Let's say that's my primary self. I'm emotional. What does emotional mean, by the way? What does emotional mean to you?
Sensitive. You're too sensitive. If you're emotional.
Okay.
Moody.
Moody.
You change modes very often.
Sensitive, moody.
Vulnerable. Vulnerable.
Vulnerable.
More open to experience different emotions and to connect with the others. To
Okay.
be able to feel the emotions and be easier for you to connect with them.
Okay, so emotional is basically another part of the mind. Do you know that? It has nothing to do with the heart. Emotions have nothing to do with the heart. It's just the way you respond, the way you understood something and the way you respond makes you emotional. So emotional means that the thinking is not very clear. Because the emotions, the reactions to something, the reactions are more prevalent. You're more into reacting. I said all these wonderful things and you just stare at me and you didn't go like that. Do you like me? Did you like this? What do you think about this? Do you like me? That's emotional. I react to her reaction. You see? I react to your words. I react to your actions. Intellectual and rational, it's only calculating. Okay, what is a limitation in being intellectual?
But you're not in touch with your emotions.
Completely not. Emotions come in, they start, the thoughts are not clear. Okay? Alright? Now, even emotional, someone said vulnerable, okay? That if you're emotional is your primary self, you think you're vulnerable. You're not. You're not. Vulnerability is something else. Emotion, you're just reacting. Vulnerability, you see, all these primary selves I'm mentioning, they're up here. Think about it as the umbrella to protect. Remember we said? Protect vulnerability. So even emotional has nothing to do with vulnerability. Vulnerability is an openness. It's a willingness it's the strength to say, I don't know. You know, it requires strength for you to ask me something and for me to say, I have no idea, I don't know. That requires strength. That's vulnerability. The I don't know is vulnerability. Emotions is reacting to you. So, these selves develop and they protect us. And they become part of who we are. Not part, they become who we are. We think we are the primary self. And we walk in the world thinking this is who I am. My friends describe me as who I am. Now, whatever goes under, like I said, either we fall in love with them and we want to marry them, or we want to kill them. Or first we marry them and then we want to kill them. Right? It depends. So what happens? Whatever goes under, so let's say I'm very dynamic and I move fast. What's the opposite? Laid back, right? No, take time. We say, είπαμε 10, εντάξει, 10,5, it's okay. Right? Laid back. If I get attracted, that attracts me. Why? Either it will attract me, okay? Why? Because it's something I cannot do. And whenever I am around someone that is laid back, what happens to my laid back, because I contain that, it starts to vibrate. And if I want it at that moment, it feels good. It feels that vicariously I can feel laid back. I can be laid back. But if I don't like it, and it starts, if I'm with someone laid back and we are late and Yolanda starts at 10 and you're not ready yet, blah, 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 I can't stand that person, right? If you cannot stand that person, that means again, it starts to vibrate in you, but you don't want it. You don't want to experience that. So what do? You judge. Every single time you judge someone, what you judge is your disowned self. What you judge, you carry. But for survival reasons, you had to push it away. So they're not good or bad primary selves. Do you see that? Is this starting to emerge here? There's no good and bad. Bad cultures do tend to make lists. What is good and what is bad. So in the States, if you're too laid back, that's very bad. You're going nowhere. Right? What's the primary self of Cyprus?
Judging.
Huh?
Judging.
Beautiful. Okay, that's great. Okay, judging. You said judging, right? Okay. Why is it judging? Why is judging on? What do you think the judging is more towards? What is judged the most? Do you think?
You're pretty much everything.
The jealousy.
Huh?
The jealousy. The jealousy.
Okay, jealousy is great. Jealousy, judging, is completely connected to disowned selves. There is a lot of, like in every culture, there's a lot of rules. Okay? We have actually a primary self that is called the rule maker. Rule maker. We make rules to survive. Otherwise it would be chaos, right? We need the rules. But, like in every culture, okay, Cyprus has many rules that they sound like this is right, this is wrong. Correct? Okay. So, and there is a well-developed primary self of need to impress and to be liked, like in every other culture. Alright? So, when your whole focus is about, I want to impress you, guess what? I will only do what you think will be great. What does that mean? I sacrifice my individuality. I sacrifice what comes from this. The psychic fingerprint carries with it something that is completely unique to you. For example, I write poetry. For me, if I could make money about writing poetry, that's all I want to do. That is part of my psychic fingerprint. If I don't write, I can't breathe. It has a palpable physical reaction to me. I have to write. So this is part of this here. But if I knew that I would be made fun of saying to you, I write poetry and I present my poetry, guess what? It will go under. And whatever is natural, it comes with your psychic fingerprint for you to do. If you think your family, your culture, and again, we're in Cyprus here, so I'm talking about, if it was America, I will talk about American culture, okay? So if you know that it will not be rewarded, it will not be liked, guess what? It goes under. But that creates the most dissatisfied, miserable, sad life. And then I see someone else writing poetry and presenting. Don't you think I will be jealous?
You
Bet.
Don't you think I'll be jealous? And don't you think either I will say, oh, you know, or I will say, like yes, right? So whatever, because the main focus is, it has to be like, what would the others say? That is, by the way, very prevalent in the States. A lot of people don't understand that. It's completely prevalent in the States. What would others think? And if you live with what would others think, you deny your uniqueness of expression. And that causes you, whoever you see that they are expressing their uniqueness, you get jealous. And you judge. And you put down. And you make fun of. Every time you or someone else, you hear judgment, they are judging a disowned self, a part that went under, that has not been useful. Critical to understand that. So, before I go further, can you, whoever wants to share, what did you put on the, as you're looking at your paper, up or down on the left side? What are some words, what are some characteristics you put on the left side of your questionnaire? What did you put?
Forgiving.
Huh?
Forgiving.
Forgiving. Okay. So forgiving. All right. Someone else? Come on.
Assertive, confident.
Assertive, confident. Okay.
Positive, generous.
Okay. So let's keep this. So forgiving, assertive,
Positive, generous.
generous. Okay. So what is a strength in forgiving? The greatest strength in forgiving.
You feel better.
That's right.
Relief.
That's right. Relief. You feel better. It's like 10 tons off you, right? What is a limitation in forgiving?
Limitation.
Exploitation.
Yeah.
Exploitation.
Exploitation.
Others may get used.
Got it. Great. Exploitation. Okay. So what is a strength? What did you say?
Εκμετάλλευση.
Oh, no. About yours.
Confident.
Confident. So what is a strength in being confident?
Strength. Independent. Yeah. You feel good.
You feel good. You feel grounded. You feel like, you know, you're detached a bit of what the others will say, how you will come across. It's like, okay? So what's a limitation in being confident?
Loneliness.
That's right. That's right. And a lot of judgment by others. Because confidence is something that goes under in this culture. And in America, please don't hear me say in the culture, okay? It goes under. So if when I was confident, I was made fun by my brother, let's say, right? If I was made as a little child, I learned to be quiet. But if I come and I see you confident, I get jealous. And I judge you and I put you down. Look at her. And I make fun of you. You see? Because whatever you make fun is something that you disown. So that is so important. And because if you think of confidence, you only think, what can be wrong about that? If you think forgiveness, what can possibly be, limitation about that? You can't, but every single characteristic has two sides. This is critical to remember that. And you said generous. So it's very obvious what is the gift of being generous, right? What's the limitation in being generous?
Exploitation.
Exploitation.
That's right. And also, not only exploitation, because exploitation is like the other will do to you. But if I am generous, what is limitation to me? Not necessarily what the other will do to me.
Maybe you won't be generous to yourself, so you only give. So
Right on. Okay? So being generous sometimes, there is a self-neglect. Because the main focus is, what do you need? What do you need? I'll be there, I'll do it for you. And very often there is self-neglect. You don't know what you want. The same thing with pleaser. If someone is a pleaser, has a pleaser as a primary self, right? What's the opposite of pleaser? What went under? What's the disowned self? So primary self is the pleaser. I look around, what would please each one of you? That means, what went under?
I don't please myself.
Huh?
I don't
Okay,
please
so-
myself.
Yeah?
Self-neglect.
yes.
Yeah, but these are the limitations of what? Of the pleaser, right? Yeah, but what went under? What's the opposite of the pleaser?
Anesthesia.
Well, selfish. Okay? Selfish. Because pleaser, I want to please you. Selfish, I only see and care about myself. What's a strength in being selfish?
You put your needs first.
That's right. You know your needs. That's so critical. Pleasers don't know what they need. They don't know what they want. And something else, you won't believe this. Pleasers are the greatest liars. Because I cannot please all of you. I mean, if you tell me, look at my haircut, and I hate it, if I'm a pleaser, I would say, oh, very good, beautiful, right? Selfish, what's a gift in being selfish? Take care of yourself, and you're not so scared to say what you think. To just whoop, however you think. And of course, let's go to honesty. So, honest, if you have a primary self of honest, right? I am honest. What's a limitation in being honest?
You're not liked by anyone.
Well, when you're honest, you can hurt people. All right? So honesty, the way that I define and I survive with trying to be honest, is either if I don't have something nice to say that I feel honestly that is true, I say nothing. But if you have the primary self of honest, that means there's no holding back. You just say whatever and the limitations that can hurt people. Dishonest, the opposite, of course, is dishonest, right? So dishonest, what's a gift in being dishonest? You see, you don't think that. We don't think that often. You don't think it's a gift in being selfish. It's a gift in being dishonest. You don't think that. What's a gift in being dishonest?
Pleasing.
That's right. That's right. And that's a characteristic of the pleaser. If you want to please everybody, I know you're a liar. And I don't say it with bad, I mean, you have to. You have to, otherwise you can't please everybody all the time.
No question.
Yeah,
Do we have only one primary self?
hundreds.
Hundreds. So if we have.
But
Okay.
But mainly we have a cluster. We have a group. So for example, some of my primary selves, it can be like the independent, the organizer, the pusher, okay? So they work together, the planner, they work together. But if I start doing voice dialogue, so what is voice dialogue? Voice dialogue, it's a method where you invite these different parts, that each part is an entity by itself. It's an actual person that has a way of expressing themselves, they have a way of walking, they have a way of look. So for example, if I don't wear high heels, I feel in my body, I feel a bit different. You know, you feel more comfortable. When I wear high heels, you know, all of a sudden my femininity, you know, when I wear makeup, my femininity is more in touch with me. If I wear nothing and I don't care, it's different. I mean, I'm sure you experience that. When you're dressed at home and you're in your, you know, sweats, or when you go out. It's a different part that works out. Then we have sensuality. We have Aphrodite. We have Athena. We have Artemis. You know, all these Greek, the Greek gods and goddesses, they carry, I mean, they are the archetypes of these selves that I'm talking about. They are connected completely with they are the archetypes of these energies that we're talking about. So a woman that doesn't carry her sensuality, she can dress sexy or whatever, and she won't be attractive. And a woman that does not dress sexy but has sensuality, heads turn, and you don't know why. Because of the sensuality that is carried. You see. The men too. Men carry that too as well. So, yes, now your question.
Another question. If a characteristic has two sides, would it be possible that the person knows the two sides?
Yes.
So it behaves, for example, forgiveness and exploitation. So if I'm forgiving and I know about exploitation, then I can balance those two.
Yeah, but you see, forgiveness, you're forgiving. Exploitation, others do it to you. There are two different things here. So I can be forgiving, and are you asking if also I'm in touch? You know, if I forgive, what's the opposite of forgive? The opposite of forgive is not exploitation. Exploitation is that someone can take advantage of me being forgiving. You see? So exploitation is if I have the characteristic of exploiting others, you mean?
Okay, maybe it wasn't. Say that I think with my mind. I become
Intellectual.
Intellectual, and I hide my emotions.
Yes.
Isn't it possible? In some cases, I bring up my emotions. And
Beautiful.
I think,
Excellent point. So let's talk about that now. That's an excellent point, all right? So primary self, usually we are in touch. We know the primary self. That's how we do life. We walk in the world thinking this is who we are, which means we limit ourselves, really, right? Because we are so much more than our primary self, and these are the good news. So sometimes life brings situations that flip us on the other side. So the disowned self, it's hidden but carries the opposite and equal in power energy as the primary self. So when I said it goes under, it doesn't go under to die. Actually the opposite. Whatever you hit, you are unconscious of, you bury it, it goes under, and guess what? It grows. So when there is something in life that tears up the disowned self and it comes out, it doesn't come out as, oh, I feel a little upset. It comes in a big way, explosive. Because whatever goes under, with, you know, it's time, who said that to me? Oh, You said that too. So I was gonna use it. So osquilos. So when you tie up a dog, right, for a long time, and then you let him free, it's not gonna be, like that. It's gonna attack you. That's exactly how it happens with disowned selves. So for example, sometimes I give, did I answer that? Did I answer you? Okay, so whatever we disown, if we are, sometimes there are situations that it breaks out. But when it breaks out, it's much more intense than if we were from time to time allowing it. Because the goal of voice dialogue, what is the goal of voice dialogue? Is to help you identify your primary self, not only intellectually, energetically. That's the key to identifying how the vibration, because every primary self has a unique energetic vibration. To identify the vibration and to separate it. And so that what took me years to separate from my pusher, from my independent, right? So now I know when she's operating. And if it's not useful, so voice dialogue helps me separate energetically, create a new space in my psyche, and now here, I know her limitations and I know her strengths. But if you are in primary self, you only know your strengths. You're right. You see, you're always right here. Because the beliefs that the primary self carries thinks that this is the way it is. Έτσι πρέπει να είναι. You see, the word πρέπει is very strong. What you have to do, what you should do is strong. But these are language of the primary self. That's why, in fact, I will get back to you, Athos. Hold on a minute. No. So that's why I said to you before, in 5 minutes, I can tell your primary self. Because if I listen, I hear your language when you say πρέπει. This is the way it should be. I hear the primary self-talk. I hear your values in that, right? So then, so I separate and I come to a new place that now I know the strengths and limitations and I start developing a relationship here to my primary self. That's the key. And the key is to develop more, to strengthen this neutral place, because it's not like, esoteric traditions, religions and all that say, don't judge. But if you are in a primary self, you will judge. Because a primary self has rules, do's and don'ts, good and bad. But if I'm here, I know the both sides of this self. So naturally, there's no judgment here. Naturally. You don't even have to try. You see. And the goal of voice dialogue is once you separate from the primary self and I get permission from the primary self to go visit the opposite. And you hear the story, the history, why this part had to go under, why it was not useful, and how it can help me now. So then you come back and now you're embracing both sides. Because why? Because you know the strengths and the limitations of both sides. You're not caught, this is right and this is wrong. Because now I know selfish has a gift as well. You see? Now, very rarely from here I become this. You see, if I'm independent, I will end up shifting and needy would become my primary self. It's very unusual, right? But now, when this place was getting ready, I accessed my neediness and I said, I need help. I cannot put up the room, I cannot do this. I asked for help and people helped. If I was not in touch with the needy, I tell you, I will tell Costin, Costin, don't bother, we'll come early, we'll come from 7 o'clock and set up the room. I will say that. There were times that I would do that. But I need the needy to say, can you please do that for me? Thank you. So if I'm intellectual and rational most of the time, you see, I need the needy to say, I don't feel good today. I need some time alone. I need to relax. I need to talk a little bit about something. If I don't have access of that, I cannot say that. The intellectual always figures it out by themselves. Calculates. And the another limitation in being intellectual, you're tired. Another limitation of being a pusher, you're exhausted. Another primary self, we didn't do responsible. Responsible can be a huge primary self. And responsible is, I don't only know my responsibilities, I can take care of yours, of yours, of yours, and of yours. Give them to me. I can do everything. Okay? So what happens? Irresponsible goes out, under. Guess what? You find yourself surrounded by irresponsible people. If you live in intellectual, you find yourself surrounded by emotional people. So I talked about the opposite of if it's disowned, you judge or you fall in love with, right? But look at your spouses. They are your disowned self. First, we choose a partner because of the commonalities, attraction, da-da-da-da. But if you go a little bit further, no matter what, you'll find where the two of you are opposites. That means that person, your companion, carries your disowned, one of your disowned selves. And that's what, in the beginning, when I said, first we fall in love with them, and then one morning you wake up and it's like, what was I thinking? Because you can't stop them now. Of what you felt. When I work with couples, I do a lot of work with couples. I do retreats. And when I work with couples, when a couple comes to me, my first question is, when you first met, what was the first thing that attracted you? Not on physically and personality. What was the very first thing? And they tell me, oh, you know what? He was paying so much attention to me. He wanted to know where I was, very interested in me. What's the problem now? He's possessive. You see what happens? So it's the same thing, but on the other side. So I do also a lot of work with people that are just getting together in relationships, not committed yet, whatever. And as long as you're aware, actually, in your handouts, don't look right now, but in one of the yellow paper there, if you like to receive a newsletter that I do every other month, I do a very 5-minute video presentation. And the one that came in January, it's actually about the 3 questions to ask when you meet someone. The 3 questions is, what was the first thing that you liked? Look at the opposite, because that person comes with that too. Okay? And the other question is, what is one thing that you can't stand about the person? That annoys you. It really annoys you. And you think, oh, don't worry. When we marry, θα τον αλλάξω εγώ. Okay? Guess what? It won't happen. It will not happen. Because primary selves, when you're not aware of your primary selves and you don't do work to separate from them, you live in that self and you keep attracting the opposite. You're surrounded. So what does that mean? It means, I mean, this is one method, the voice dialogue. I'm sure you guys that work in the field have many other methods. So I'm not saying this is the method, this is the only method. The idea is, if you separate, let's say, from the intellectual, and you open up, you expand to your emotionality, to your emotional part, then you stop attracting all the emotional people. Because now you live in a world that is more balanced. You see, that you have access of both.
I have a question, but because Athos wanted to ask something.
No, it's been answered.
Ah, okay.
I'm so good.
Alright.
Go ahead.
So it's more healthy to be in the neutral state.
It's not neutral, you see. Here is called aware ego process. This is not neutral. It ends up being neutral because there's no judgment there. But in order, that's the goal. And it's not a state, that's a great question. It's not a state that you say, oh, okay, I'm gonna go in the middle now. I'm in this state. If you say that, you're not there. So it's a state that is in constant move.
Transitional.
Always moving, not transition, moving. Meaning, so as I'm presenting now, I'm very aware, not of my presenter, of the person that has this information and knows it and is going to give it to you, not to take over. To also have my vulnerability and my not knowing available to me, so I can hear. If someone has something new information that I didn't know, I can hear it and recognize it. If I am all in there, I know it all, I won't hear anything. So in order to be there, I'm always here. So the therapist that I'm independent and a needy person comes and my treatment is to make them independent, I am doing therapy from a primary self. But if I move, and this place is, I don't know. Let's see what comes. Remember what I said? This theory is about what is, not what is wrong.
Now comes the question.
Did I answer the first one though?
Yeah. The question, however, was how do we achieve? Tell us some tactics, some practices to be able to get away from that primary.
Beautiful question. So one practical, quick way to do it is whenever, well, of course, to get voice dialogues facilitations. That's the best way, right? But I'm not around, so okay, I understand. So one way is whenever you feel so certain, so yes, this is the way it is, to walk over and think and go into the exact opposite. The exact opposite. So I'm looking for a house, right? And I was like, and if I have the intellectual as a primary self, I give you an example, right? I have the intellectual as a primary self, the, calculating the numbers, the cost, the expenses, and I see houses, and I'm all in this self, and I go, and it's like, that's the one, the numbers fit, I can afford it, that's the one. Okay, I buy the house. I didn't check with my emotional. I didn't check with, how does it feel like to be in this house? I didn't check with that. I just checked numbers, right? So whenever you feel this is the way, you walk over and you bring the exact opposite, as if you took the exact opposite decision, and stay there and pretend, no, that's the decision now. You see? And in that way, roughly, you are inviting the disowned self to be present. Because disowned selves, they had a very good reason to go under, but they offer gifts. They have information for us. You see? Information that the primary self is absolutely, the primary self always tries to push away the disowned self. Doesn't want the disowned self. Because growing up, it didn't serve us. It was not good. So it's not about, do you see how non-judgment comes naturally? So that's one quick way to actually always visit. And after the break, I will do a little demonstration. Okay? What time is it?
Almost 11:10.
11, great. Okay. So how, before I go any further, any other comments or questions? Yeah.
when you were saying that the more we bury, we put under, the more it grows, I remember a very nice phrase from Savopoulos' song. Όσο θάβεις το σφουράκι, τόσο βγάζει ανθό.
Beautiful. That I don't know if he's talking about his own self, but that's the idea. That's exactly the idea. That's beautiful because that captures the idea of the disowned self. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I want to share is that as we were speaking, I was thinking and from myself and from my practitioner that I actually have strong primary selves. So because I am in a phase that I really try to get connect with the other part, but
Which other part? Which one part and the other part?
the other part is the unconscious characteristic of what we're talking
Of the professional?
No,
No, what?
The disown.
Yes, the
Yeah, but I need to know which disowned self. I need to know
specific,
Yeah.
the emotional one.
the emotional. So
Yes.
the primary is more intellectual, and you're trying to get. Yeah, okay, now I get it.
So I really get connected with what you say because when the emotional comes, it will come explosive.
That's
It will come in a phase that I have no idea where it came, and will be very explosive. So I found myself that I built two defenses, I can call them, that I barely even know them, and actually my concern is that I listen that the voice dialogue will offer the place for the other part, but I'm wondering how we get to it.
To the disowned self.
Yes, we just start intellectually and slowly. I can understand the technique, but how it will come.
Okay. So you see, who's asking the question now?
The intellectual self.
Beautiful. Okay. So now, if I give her an answer, the intellectual will understand it. It will change nothing. You see? Because the intellectual asks questions like this. A, B, C, how do you do it? By the way, the afternoon I will give some, but it's about voice dialogue, right? So when the intellectual, when I have a primary self asking the question, I will speak the language. So I will give an intellectual answer and you will be very satisfied. It will mean nothing. You see?
One part would be satisfied, the other one, no, would be...
Absolutely. The other, I didn't touch the other part.
Yes, yes.
Right? So if right now, this moment, I tell you stay with the confusion. Stay with, I have no idea how to do this. How does it feel in your body? It reacts. It's like, why did I come here? The intellectual is like, why did I come here? To walk, and I paid, and da-da-da-da-da, and I want to work out some answers. That's the intellectual. I want to understand it. Give me A, B, C, D to follow. And that works wonderful. We need the intellectual to survive, to make some meaning of what, but then when I'm saying, what I'm talking about the selves, it's not about just understanding it. It's about experiencing it. So as I'm talking to you, feel into your body how this part that is asking what it feels like, how it feels like right now asking that question, right? And then move over and separate from that energy. The minute you separate with that energy, there's a different vibration in your body. You actually feel different. Confusion comes. Okay. And confusion is a no to the intellectual. It's the worst thing that you can do to an intellectual. And by the way, they will never admit they're confused. They will make up something else. You see?
Trying to.
It takes years.
Yes.
It takes a year or so to separate from one primary self, doing, again, I'm saying that the voice dialogue method works as a facilitator, right? You have to do your own work first. So when I do the training in New York, I do 36-hour training, which is a possibility, by the way, that we will do that next year in Hydra, in Greece. We might do a 36-hour training. It takes, so what I do in the morning is just teaching, right? In the afternoon, the training, you give facilitations and you receive facilitations. And only by giving and receiving facilitations, you start to develop. But, like you asked before, what is something that can be done the minute I walk out? And this is one of the things. But, the primary self is very tricky, especially the intellectual. It's so tricky. Oh, let's do the other one. Let's do the pusher. The one that wants to do things, activities and all that, right? So, a pusher decides, I'm a pusher, I do too many things, guess what? I'm gonna take a vacation. So the pusher pretends it's laid back, right? But the pusher goes on vacation. What does the pusher do in vacation? What's the first thing they will do when they go to the hotel?
Clean it.
Organize.
First thing they will do
Organize the excursion.
Yes. Plan all the activities I'm gonna do to relax.
And not only plan A, plan B, plan C.
Beautiful. So that's a pusher on vacation. You see how tricky it is? It's amazing how tricky it is. So you go on vacation, but if the pusher is going on vacation, they have activities to do on their relaxing day. I invited friends, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, but I'm relaxing today. You know, this is a weekend of relaxation. They're lazy. So now we are entering into the self-criticism.
Judge.
Okay? Yeah. So which I will do in the afternoon when, after the break, I will go into the inner critical voice.
Have I done something?
How that critical voice comes and cuts us to pieces. All
So
right?
how would you call the opposite of the pusher?
Laid back.
Laid back.
Laid back.
Not lazy.
No,
relaxed.
lazy. The pusher will call the laid back
All right.
lazy.
Laid back se llama jalar.
Halara. That's right. That's right. Right? Okay? And if you're halara in the States, you're finished. You're finished. Halara. Now, let's talk about the family, okay? In every single family, think of the family like a pizza pie with different pieces, right? In a family system, each individual takes a piece. So if I am very intellectual, I will have someone in my family who's very emotional. If there's nobody like that, guess what? Someone will marry someone and they will bring someone, or you will give birth to it, or you work with them, okay? So in the family, always, very often you're saying, I can't believe you're in the same family, your brother and sister, what are you talking about? You have the same parents? How is possible? That's how it's possible. Because the energy, you see the energy, the universal energy always strives for balance. And balance, by the way, does not look like this. Balance looks like this. Being centered, meaning always noticing when you're not balanced and coming back, noticing you're off balance and coming back. That's what balance looks like. It doesn't look like this. So because the universe always looks for balance, in a family system, you always have extremes. And if you don't, they bring through marriage. And if they don't, they give birth to them. But somewhere in every family, one is extreme this way, the other will be extreme that way. And of course, they either love each other or they hate each other. They don't talk to each other, they blame each other, blah, blah, blah. You see how it moves? There's no exception in this. No exception in this. Any other questions or comments? Now, if you look at your answers in the questionnaire, I want, before the break, I want someone to give me what you have on the other side, on the right side. What are some words you have on the right side?
Humbleness. Humbleness.
Humble. Being humble. So humble is something most people admire. Right? You admire. Humble. Okay?
Honest.
So, what?
Honest.
Honest. You have on the other side something you
I like to.
you have it on the right side.
Yes.
On the right side, something you like to. And tell me what you have on the right side on the bottom.
The other character that I don't like,
Yeah.
to advantage me.
Okay. Okay. To take advantage of it. So that is something that is done to you. But someone who takes advantage of someone, what do you call them? What do you call someone who's taking advantage of someone? Exploiting? Exploiting. But we found what's a gift in exploiting others?
Helpers.
No, what did you say?
I said helpers.
Helpers. Helpers, you said?
Yeah, but
Okay, exploiting others, exploit others. How is it a gift being an exploiter? That's right. That's right. You get your way done. Your work done.
Yes.
You get your work done.
Yes.
You get what you need done. You get things done. You get things done. When you exploit, you get things done. Alright? But when you identify with being exploited all the time, then what did you disown? Being generous. You don't give. You just say, "Lepo, how can I take advantage of you?" Right? But if I am, how can I take advantage of you? I can do things. I can create things. Okay? Yeah. Is it starting to take form? I mean, is it clear?
Yes.
Yeah.
Question just to clarify. You said the way towards non-judging is to be balanced? Is that what you said?
No, the way not to judge is to know the strengths and limitations of a personality characteristic. So if I know exploiting, since we were talking about being exploiting, has two sides. When I experience myself as exploiting, I don't feel bad or good. It's like something that needs to be done. As long as there is movement, as long as you're not stuck in oneself.
So if you have a balanced view of...
But to have balance, you have to separate first from the primary self. And that's the hardest part. To identify your primary self and to separate from them. Because they are so convinced they are right. So whatever you put on the left-hand side, those are your primary selves. Whatever you have on the bottom of the right side, they are your disowned selves. They are things you can't stand. You carry that. But for whatever reason, you had to disown it. Can you give me another one? What you have on the bottom of the right side?
Grignala, I don't know in English.
Nagging.
Nagging. Oh, that's beautiful. Okay, nagging. What's a positive in nagging?
Get what you want. Sharing relief.
After some time, what you want. I mean, you can nag to the other person to insanity, so they say yes.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you carry it or you have it done to you?
You tell me?
Are you a nagger? Do you nag?
No.
I don't believe you.
Maybe inside of me.
You see?
Yes, I understand.
Yes. So if
It's
you
a part
have,
that I hold. Yes, and it's in my subconscious.
that's right. But if you have an intellectual as your primary self, you know, intellectuals, they excuse it that it makes sense. They give you all the reasons why you should do something. That's nagging in an intellectual way. And they make sense actually. You see, you when you want to convince someone and you have intellectual as a primary self, you give them rational reasons why they should do it. That's nagging, but through intellectual.
Okay, so what we have put in here, it's here is primary self and here is unconscious, but it's
Okay, so give it to me.
Yeah.
So here, what you put here, so on your right side, these are all your primary selves.
Yeah.
Here are all your disowned selves.
Disowned selves.
So either you like and admire it or you hate it.
Yeah.
Because a disowned self, like I said before, when you meet them, either you admire them and you fall in love with them,
We don't like it.
or you want to kill them. You just want to fight them off. Yeah.
What the people is from jealousy or gossip?
Gossip. Okay. So gossip is when you don't. So gossip is when you don't have a life and you live and you live through vicariously someone else's life. Okay? It's funny, but it's not funny because while you gossip, number one, when you gossip, first of all, I need someone to gossip with, right?
Yes.
I need to tell you about her. So immediately we have a triangle here, right? So you and me are completely absent and we bring the third entity to entertain us. Gossip is very entertaining. I love gossiping. I do. It gives you, because you're out of the picture, you're not involved, you're non-existent, and you're taking the other person and you just tear them apart, right? So that, it's a way of avoiding you and me. We are not together even, because the third comes and is in between us. So we are dealing with the third, good or bad, because gossip can be diorea or dipalea, right? So the third entity becomes the focus, and you and I are avoiding each other. We're not talking about ourselves, we're not talking about each other, we're talking about the third entity. And the other thing with gossiping, it's always conversation. I mean, you can always find someone to gossip about, right?
Yeah.
You can always have conversation when you gossip. It's always something to say. So gossiping, when you say bad things, then so gossiping. Are you clear what gossiping is? Okay, it keeps you entertained. It keeps you. But spiritually, I have to say something else also. In my new book, on poetry, I have a wonderful poem about poetry. I don't have it with me anyway. When you gossip spiritually, and the gossip is about saying bad things about the person, what you do actually, you take their darkness and you put it on you. Because even if it's entertaining and it's like la 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 la, at the end of gossiping, if you pay attention, you don't feel good. Most of us don't pay attention, so we don't realize it. But if you say bad things about someone, at the end, you have freed them spiritually. You take all their darkness and you carry it now. Και νιώθεις βαρύς. It becomes, you carry their heaviness, their darkness. And why religions or spirituality say don't gossip? Why? This is the reason. This is the reason. It's not about manners or anything like that. So psychologically is what happened, what I explained to you. That is a third entity. I don't have to deal with you and me. But spiritually, it's not a wise thing to do.
Yeah.
You end up with other people's darkness. Yeah. Now, as you gossip, when you say, you judge, whether you say positives or negatives, because when we keep thinking judging, we think immediately, oh, it's a negative thing. Judging is negative. But you can say, oh, they are so incredible, and look, that's judging. So judging can be positive as well. So gossip absolutely involves judgment, either way. So judgment is built into gossip. Yeah. Yeah. You talk about your judgments. Yeah. Yeah. You had a question? Yeah.
You have mentioned earlier that when you move in the United States with your family, you were a kid, so you were a young lady, so you have to be strong and independent to survive.
No, because I didn't have a family, because my father left and my
okay,
mother
yeah.
didn't speak English.
Yeah. So you suppress some of your needs.
Yes.
And weakness. And
Not weakness, needs.
Needs. Okay. This is what we all do. I mean, I did it. So why do I will have the need to become friends with my disowned self?
Do you have the need to become friends with your disowned self? With needy people?
No.
Exactly. That's what I kept saying the whole morning. That when you see needy, you don't want them. You don't want to deal with them.
Yeah.
You're tired of them. It's like snap out of it. Like that. Right? You don't. You don't because being needy didn't serve you. You had to be independent. And you grew up to think that in order to make it becomes a rule. You see, primary selves function with rules and values and beliefs.
Yeah.
But it's only to the primary self. So if I'm independent, the value is that being on your own, that's the value, that's the correct way of living. And then the opposite becomes the wrong way of living. But it's just a primary self-perception. What we did, we went to the needy and we discovered the needy has many gifts. The needy asks for help. And the needy is never tired. The independent is always tired.
Yes.
You see? So if you want to relax sometime, if you don't access the needy to say to your friend, you know what, you go, I'm not going to go. That requires needy. To even say that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'll give you an example. You said that...
But did you understand so far what I said?
Yeah.
Okay. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
It's scary because...
That's right.
What I wrote here for my disowned self at the bottom...
Okay, yes.
Other characteristics that I don't like is the narcissist and the egocentric.
Okay. So...
And knowing that maybe deep inside me I am a narcissist or egocentric, it's scary for me.
To whom? To your primary self is scary. To the part, the egocentric is egocentric, and then the opposite of that is giving and caring about others. So let's say the caretaker in you that likes to take care of people is scary to that part. Do you understand? So that's a beautiful point you're bringing up, actually, because these are the intense reactions of primary selves. They are convinced this is wrong. Whenever you're convinced this is wrong, it's a primary self functioning. So your caretaker to think, for me, egocentric has good things. It's like, get her out of here. Well, how can this be? But let's visit egocentric, right? What's a gift if you are narcissistic? If you only think about yourself. you live a very comfortable life.
Take care of yourself.
Okay? You live a very comfortable life. Anything you need, you ask, you get, ta 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 ta, me. You make your body comfortable, you make your life comfortable. You have all your basic low needs and desire met. Low. Whatever the needs of the body, they belong to the low desires. We have high desires and low desires. The egocentric is always concerned with the low desires of the body. That's necessary though. If you came here and I gave you a chair that was very uncomfortable, you wouldn't be able to pay attention to me. You see? So you chose actually a very comfortable chair, you the non-egocentric. You see what I mean? But it's funny. But you know, I become completely egocentric. When I go to a presentation, I go early, I check the chairs, and I sit always in the most comfortable chair. I become very, I haven't, but you see, I don't feel bad that I have egocentric because I know the egocentric Yolanda is not ruling my life. I call her whenever I need to take care of myself. And then we go down, and then it's like, okay, how can I help? I mean, that's my job. Anyway, you see. But the fear, the way you said it, it's beautiful because that is the experience of the primary self. So what it means to me is that your primary self has been present, listening to this, and has a reaction. You see? So in order to separate from the primary self, let's say if I was doing a facilitation with you, whenever you do a facilitation, you first invite the primary self because you have to honor the primary self. Because the primary self is not going to change, aside from the questions you ask, that if it's a flip and something happens, a life situation happens, that you have to go on the other side, right? Like when I was in Cyprus, I mean, that happened to me, a flip. My mother was taking care of everything, I was lazy, I was doing nothing. You know, the Greek mother, Cypriot mothers, they do everything. So I go there, and it was a flip. I had to take care of everything because of life situation. But usually the primary selves, we develop with them and they stay if you're not aware of them. And you live, you see, you live like in one leg. One leg. And if you live all in your primary self, if someone wants to completely stabilize you, just like that, if I'm on one leg, is to criticize you, caretaker is not good. The other people take advantage of you. And if I criticize your primary self, immediately you get destabilized. And you rush to justify that that's a good way to be. But having also awareness of your disowned self and the gifts of the disowned self, you're in two legs. You can't destabilize me easily. So if you tell me, you know, if I'm like independent, and you said to me, after this was not an independent thing to do, you're needy. If I was here and you told me I'm needy, I would be like, no. But I know I'm needy. Yeah, needy is good sometimes. If you tell me I'm needy, you're not touching me. Because I know both have gifts. And one is not better than the other. One is more useful than the other when I was growing up, in my life as I formulated it. You see, if I didn't have the pusher in me, I wouldn't do this. I mean, the last time I came to Cyprus was 5 years ago. I come to Cyprus and I'm going to work, but the pusher was asked. You know, I had to bring the pusher to do this. This is work. And pleasure. I love it. Yeah.
To what extent does the DNA affect this theory?
Well, like I said in the very beginning, is genetic predisposition. I don't have percentages, and I don't know.
Okay.
But it does affect the family that you were born, because families have personalities. So if I was born, if let's say I'm very artistic, I'm very expressive, I have fantasy, I have imagination, I look outside and I can write a poem and I notice the trees and like that, right? If I'm born like that and my family is completely intellectual, guess what? You think they will like me? No, they will make fun of me, they will put me down. It's like a cinefa, stuff like that, you see? Alright, ziston gosmos, oh, that's a beautiful saying. Ziston gosmos, yeah, we all do. When you have a primary self, αυτός είναι ο κόσμος μας. The primary self is our world, and we all have one. But if that primary self of that person is the opposite of your primary self, ziston gosmos, you put them down, you see? That's the only time that we judge. If someone is expressing something we disown. Yes?
But this is the rule that the family will judge or criticize? Maybe
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. I'm talking if the family carries the opposite primary self. If the family is intellectual and concrete and pragmatic and with no imagination, it's just, only on concrete issues, that fantasy and imagination is their disowned self. So if a child in that family is expressing the disowned self of the parents, they will not understand it. They will have a lot of fights, they have a lot of τι θα γίνεις, καλλιτέχνης? Go become an accountant. I'm not putting accountant down. You see what I mean?
Or accept it.
Oh, absolutely, it's a possibility. But I'm just saying to you that chances are, first, it will be a dislike. And I'm not saying they will not accept it. I am saying in order to accept your disowned self, you need to have a lot of awareness, a lot of self-awareness. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm saying if you don't have self-awareness that someone can be the exact opposite of you and still be okay, you will judge it. If you feel that there's acceptance, this is actually good. So acceptance can be a primary self. You accept everything. You see this, you accept it. You see this, you accept it. You see black, white, you accept everything. It's a primary self. What's a limitation in being accepting as a primary self?
No values. No,
You lose your identity. You lose
no
your
identity.
There's no limits. There's no limits. Some things in life are unacceptable. Some gestures in life are unacceptable.
Who dictates what is unacceptable? Your
It's
values.
unacceptable.
Values.
Absolutely. It's unacceptable to hate, to abuse. But it's like, no, I understand they have a bad childhood. No, my husband emotionally abuses me. No, it's okay, it's alright, you should stay, No, there's some times that you need to put a line. A line, and I don't mean the example I gave, divorce or anything, but a line of something is unacceptable, and especially abuse, verbal or physical. So if you're acceptable of everything, you find, so acceptance really is a beautiful, wonderful primary self because it opens you up and you embrace most of life. You live actually very pleasant. But if you don't have a line, that's the only limitation I can think. Yeah. Yeah?
No, Yolanda, you set an example before that is very healthy, standing on both feet. Okay? Now, if someone has a balanced life and everything seems to be okay, it's more easy to be on both feet.
No.
If it,
Not necessarily.
not
at all.
necessarily.
Both feet has nothing to do with having a life that you have everything.
But
That
you're
you're
aware
satisfied.
that you're
No,
satisfied.
both feet, when I said both feet, I meant primary self, disowned self, you have awareness and embracing both. It's very specific when I say both
Embracing
feet.
both. Okay.
Embracing to be independent, embracing to be needy, embracing to be accepted, and embracing not to accept certain things.
All right. Now the question comes now. If a tragedy comes in your life, let's say you lose your partner, it is very natural, so to say, or is a natural consequence that you become more you go more into the primary self, so you build up abilities and you build up qualities that will make you stronger, more independent. So is it evident that you may attract exactly the opposite that you're building? So you're becoming a more independent and a more self-sufficient person. Maybe it is a very you become more egoist because you need to be the one who's going to take care of everybody else who's left behind.
Yes.
So is it?
If you become that,
Yeah.
then
It is
you
more-
attract
You attract
needy.
the needy things.
Needy, irresponsible.
Yeah.
You need
Okay.
needy, irresponsible, not so caring, more self-centered. That's the kind of people you attract.
Okay. So in this case, after this tragedy, it is very possible to meet another bad situation in your life.
Oh yeah, but also without tragedy. I mean, when, let's say, you get a divorce, a lot of people have a problem in the marriage, right? And they don't understand that the first divorce has to be from the primary self, not the person themselves. Because they divorce the person, they say, oh, it was too selfish. And they divorce them, and they go marry someone else, the exact opposite. By the way, whoever divorces, the next person that comes is the exact opposite. Because that's what they miss. Also, that's how it happens in affairs.
Yeah.
Okay, if you have an affair, in people that come to me with affairs, my first question is, how is your mistress opposite from your wife? And immediately I know what has been missing in the marriage. That's how external attractions happen. Okay, so when you end tragedy in your life, especially loss, critical loss, creates incredible cracks. And I'm sorry to say that, and please don't take it the wrong way, these cracks are almost like opportunities to enter different areas that were not even under consideration before. And it happens, crisis, tragedy opens us up. It expands us. I mean, this is so sad to say, but it's true. Because the trauma is so intense. It touches, I say it and I get goosebumps. It goes to the bottom of your heart, the bottom of your existence. And it opens you up. And creates new ways to see the world. And some people actually close down even more than they were before, and some people open up and actually try something different. Yeah, great loss does that.
Maybe you feel free, and that's why you do this. These other
Yeah,
things.
oh yeah, I worked with people, absolutely. I worked with people that, even if it was love and if it was care, actually a close friend of mine, when her husband died, I knew, intuitively, I knew it freed her. But I would not say anything to that.
No.
And then one time, she told me.
Yeah.
She says to me, yes, Kenny's gone, and but I have to tell you, I feel free. Yeah. So, yeah.
I don't think it's sad, by the way. I think it's one of the greatest consolations of life. The fact that you go through these crises, but the fact that there are opportunities at the same time, I think is one of the greatest consolations that life can provide. I don't think it's sad at all. I think it's wonderful. Sad is
Yeah,
the
but
loss
it's sad.
itself.
Yeah, but when someone is grieving, you don't tell them it's a great consolation.
No.
Okay, that's what I meant.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't tell them, oh, good, now you're free.
I did have a question though.
Yeah.
I tend to work a lot with values in my work, and I talk with people about what is important to them, and becoming aware of what their values are, so they know how to change, in what direction to change, how to organize their life, or how to be. And I'm wondering what the connection is with what you're talking about in this process of becoming aware of the disowned self. Then you have a better idea of the whole continuum of, say, independence versus needy. So I guess you have more options about how to be.
That's right.
And so it's your values then that help you decide where you want to end up, say in a.
But when you
in a-
use the
in a balanced
phrase, but when you use the phrase your values, you are really referring to your primary self's values.
That was my other question. So
Yeah.
the part that makes the decision about the values, is that another primary self then? So
Okay,
it's
so
not
you're
another
ahead
level
of me.
self.
So this is where I was going, Joanna, in decision making.
Okay.
Okay, so decision making, main decision making, when you have very big decisions to make in your life-changing decisions to make, right? And you only access the primary self, okay? So the primary self carries all your values, my values, and I put quotation marks, my values, I believe this. Whenever you say I, the primary self is talking, period. Whenever you say, I believe this is right, this is correct, according to my values, this is a primary self talking. This is an energy, it's only one energy. Then you had a question before about is it how many? It might be a group, a small group, right? A cluster of cells, but they carry similar values. So if you're telling me you're helping people become more clear of their values, that means they become more clear of their primary self. Now, it's very different when there is an expansion, and you see now it's very general that I'm talking. I'm not talking about specific, it's more helpful if I speak of a specific example. You know, I don't want to talk general. But basically, when someone says, my values, I believe, or έτσι πρέπει να είναι, that's a primary self. Or no, έτσι είναι το σωστό. Primary self. Right there, immediately you know the person's primary self. Because what they express about their values, that's part of the primary self. Every primary self has a set of rules. That's it. That this is the way it is. And to get in touch, that's how difficult it is to get in touch with the disowned self. That means all the opposite of those rules also have a value. I am not talking becoming that. This is very critical to understand, guys, okay? I am not talking becoming your disowned self. I am talking taking advantage of the gifts they offer. That's all. I'm not talking changing who you are. Because almost, you know, by the way, I'm doing this work 35 years. I don't believe in change. I believe in expansion, but I believe if someone shifts whatever, in a second, they can turn back and become who they used to be. In a second. That doesn't go away. But I do believe in expansion. And I am an example of it. I know myself, you know. But it takes awareness. So the whole thing here is to be aware of your primary self, to honor it, to respect it. Because where you are right now, today, your life, is because of your primary self. So it needs to be respected. It needs to be honored. But what I'm saying to you is the other side also has gifts that you are missing if you're not willing to embrace the other side. That's all I'm saying. I am not saying it's not good. Change who you are. I'm not saying that at all. And I'm saying, if your primary self, you're locked in it, you will keep attracting people on the other side. If you're very responsible, you will keep attracting people irresponsible. If you're very intellectual, you will keep attracting people that are all emotional. And it will drive you crazy. Because you will say, what's wrong with them? How can they see it? Now you know why they can't see it. Because the emotionality is their primary self. That's why people talk and they don't understand each other. It's like one primary self talking to another primary self. And that gets us into relationships. So relationships, we always choose someone. No. Whoever we are with, they carry one of our disowned selves, at least one. That point, you see, in relationships, I always say that there are 3 points in relationships. There are points of connection, points of adjustment, and points of disconnection. Now, points of connection in a relationship is something that connects you with the other person. And by the way, relationship, it can be a friendship. It doesn't necessarily mean just romantic relationships, all right? So, points of connection, you are with that person and you're connected, you didn't work at it, you didn't try, it's just you were together and it was just like that. You connected. You are totally in agreement and you move this way together. Okay? It can be physicality. It can be you like to talk about spirituality. It can be you like to talk about psychological aspects of life or intellectual aspects of life. And both of or your actions are actions about the community, giving, and you're both. You didn't work at it, it just happened, it came by itself, and it moves. That's how people get together. Because there are some points that you connect and you feel united, you feel, finally, I found someone that is like me, right? You like music together, you play together. Then, there are points of adjustment, points where there's conflict, but with some talking, with some work, not necessarily to go to therapy, but maybe between the two of you, there's adjustment. Okay, this is like this, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna try a bit different. Okay, when you talk, I'll try to listen to you more. Okay, I won't be so controlling. All right, I know I'm controlling. Okay, what do you want to do this time? You see, there's adjustment. There's some work, there's some adjustment here. And then you have the points of disconnection. These points will never change. I don't care to what brilliant therapist you go, to what brilliant book you read, to what brilliant whatever belief you follow, they will not change. And what I find in the couples that come to me, they confuse these points with these points. So they treat a point of disconnection, something that is not going to happen. So for example, I have a friend, a very, very dear friend, and she is into, deep thinking and deep expression and pondering and thinking all the time and expressing and like that. I have that part too. That's why we connected. But then I have the part of practicality. If we need to travel, we pack, we put the name on the suitcase, and she's like, she will not even think to put the name on the suitcase. When so it comes so we just finished writing a book together actually, and so you will know her name very soon. So the book was written together. It was a struggle because we were different personalities, and now the book has to be printed. She cannot handle practicalities. We have to do this. This is the deadline. I am good with that, so I have to do that. That's a point of disconnection. She will never become, okay, 1, 2, 3, this is what we do. Never, never, never. I am like that. And I will never become like her that I don't think of details, especially when I travel. It's not going to happen. So the points of this connection are points that they're not gonna change. And if you identify them in your relationship as points of disconnection, it takes a lot of misery out, because you're not finding yourself fighting on things that no matter what, they're not gonna change. Accept them. If you cannot accept them, then this is it. This is it. So points of adjustment you can change, and points of connection, they move by themselves. They're just wonderful. Yeah. So
disconnection does it.
Because with the points of disconnection, that's all you can do. Accept it. Nothing else.
Accepting diversity, actually. If you say...
No, that's very different. Accepting diversity is something different.
Different way of thinking.
What?
Accepting different way of thinking.
But that's the whole point. The psychology of the selves and this method, you end up just over there. You expand your own world, and then you accept other people without trying. You see? Or you know, it's to accept. No, you have to understand. And you have to understand why it's difficult to accept. How do you think wars begin? Wars begin because of primary disowned selves. Because America wants to make everybody like them. And they have no idea how, about disowned selves. And they try to take over. That's... but let's not go to a wars. Let's go to the wars in home. Okay? Home wars. So... in finding a partner, you see, it's quite helpful to recognize these three different areas and to pay attention when you fight. What do you fight about? By the way, fighting is very healthy. It's very healthy. It doesn't allow you to swallow and swallow and swallow. And actually, that's how fights break out. If, let's say, something annoys you a little bit, and you say nothing, it will grow into a big fight. So annoyance needs to be expressed at the moment that is this big. If you don't say something annoys me, it grows and it grows, and when it comes out, it's a huge explosive fight. That gets you nowhere. Now, when you said something else in the point you made, Alexia. When something happens that is unpleasant, you see, let's talk about you meet someone, you fall in love with them because you fall in love with their disowned self, okay? And you get together, and then what happens? Life details seep in. When life details seep in, we move immediately to the primary self. Because in the primary self, we feel the most grounded, the most clear, the most secure, the most confident. Because we've been there the longest. But it's just a primary self. So when there's a crisis, I think you said something about that, when there's a crisis, immediately we move to primary self. And the point is, there's nothing wrong with that. Just know what you're doing. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the way we are and we all have to change. Just know all you need to do, know your primary self. That's a start. Know some of your primary selves, because then it will make sense what you judge, who are around you. And now entering self-criticism. Okay, self-criticism, inner critic attacks. Hal Stone always says, if you're able to work with your mind, to work with your vulnerability, to know your vulnerability, handle your vulnerability, and handle your inner critic, you did 90% of self-growth. And that's a very, very big statement. Self-criticism, we all have self-criticism. And that's the inner critic. It's the inner critical voice that tells us, I can't believe you did this. I can't believe you said that. Look at you, da da da. We all have it. Anybody never had primary critic? You know who never had? Is the series of Curb Your Enthusiasm? Do you have those series here? Curb Your Enthusiasm. Anyway, it's a character that doesn't have inner critic, and everyone hates him because he does whatever he wants. He doesn't have it. So inner critical voice is very important because it helps us live in a civilized world. Can anybody tell me some of the inner critical voice? What it might say? You know, for my critical voice, it would say, I also have a tiny little bit of a perfectionist and does not allow me to make any mistakes. And if I make a mistake, I can't believe you did that, and it's pounding me, okay? So, the inner critical voice is the same as the judge. When you judge people, so when you judge people, this looks outside, and I judge you. The same entity turns and looks at me and puts me down.
Is it consciousness?
Well, the consciousness of there's awareness is connected to the primary self. Remember, we said primary self has rules. If you yourself break those rules, it's almost like the police force of the primary self. It's coming to put you down, to beat you up, to go back to the rules. Example. So, I always say this example. So we have the Christmas party in the States. I don't know here. You have Christmas party in the office. Mm-hmm. You know, you work in the office. You have Christmas parties. Okay. So we have Mary, who is very, very prudish. You know, proper, always proper and polite and very Sebasmia, right? You know, and then we have the office Christmas party, and Mary comes, and Mary comes and has a few drinks, right? And then you look, and Mary has taken off her jacket, and she's the one dancing on the table. Great, everybody's entertained. Oh, look at Mary, she's opening up, blah, blah. Mary goes to sleep, and then she wakes up the next day. And she gets what we call the slap. Mm-hmm. So what happened in the party, and by the way, alcohol and drugs do that. Alcohol and drugs put the primary self to sleep. That's very important, because when it comes to working with addictive people, okay, people that have addiction, relapse happens. So when the alcohol or the drugs put the primary to sleep, what does that mean? The disowned self can come up, and they become like unlike. Look, think about yourselves. When you got drunk the last time, maybe some of you stayed in the primary self, but maybe some other times, I know myself, when I am drunk, I become much more loose, as if I'm not loose enough. But anyway, so the disowned self comes up and becomes, and then you live out of that disowned self. That's what happened to Mary. So the sexual, sensual part of her has always been disowned. She has a few drinks on her, that goes to sleep, and the more expressive and sensual woman comes up. But the morning, she wakes up in her primary self, and she feels shame. So whenever you feel shame or guilt, I'm sorry?
Do you want tea or coffee?
Oh no, I don't want coffee.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, thank you. So whenever you feel shame or guilt, you had an inner critic attack. Okay? Because the primary self has rules. Mary broke the rule of being proper, let's say. She broke the rule and she became loose, let's call it, all right? So the next morning she wakes up in this self, and this self beats her up. The inner critic is the police of the primary self. Every time you break a rule of the primary self and the disowned self breaks through, again your question, can that happen? Yes, it does happen, and it happens often. It breaks through, you get an inner critic that puts you down to make you go back and obey these rules.
So our consciousness, you're saying that our consciousness is dictated or is determined by our primary self.
By the values. By values.
So how do the values connect to the primary self?
They are one and the same. The values, depending, each primary self has its own values. If my primary self is selfish, my value is, the rule is, take care of yourself only. If my primary self is caretaking, the rule is, take care of others. Depending who your primary self is.
But often our values, I mean our behavior, our primary values do not match, our primary self doesn't match our values.
It's when the disowned self comes out and breaks the rules of the primary self. Okay? So if you do something that you feel bad and you beat yourself up and you say, I can't believe I did that, the primary self didn't do it. That you had a break in the disowned self and came and behaved a certain way, and now you feel guilty, you feel bad. You feel you disowned a value you had. The primary self carries the rules, the values, the beliefs that you live by. And it can be like we spend the whole day talking about today, a pusher, it can be an intellectual, or it can be selfish, or it can be self-centered. Whatever the primary self is, or it can be a responsible, or a pleaser, or laid back, a primary self. The opposite goes under. Whenever there's a break and that comes out and you behave from that, you feel guilty. You feel you disowned yourself. You feel that you did something wrong because that breaks the rules of your primary self. Is it more clear, I think?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is bad or good thing that?
It's not good or bad.
No.
It happens.
Because maybe sometimes we want to be the other side.
Well, but the whole idea of the psychology of the cells and the voice dialogue method is to develop this middle here that doesn't see good and bad, sees this primary self has strengths and limitations, this disowned self has strengths and limitations. I live mostly here, but here sometimes it's okay to be here because they have gifts as well. So it's not good or bad. And what I said, that we live out our primary self, and sometimes the disowned self is not good or bad, it just happens. And the most important thing is to be aware where you're at. So the next time you judge is who judges? Who judges?
The primary.
The primary self. So the next time you judge, you know you are in a primary self. The next time you feel guilty or you feel shame, you acted out of the disowned self. And the inner critic is coming to get you now. You're getting beat up, literally, by the primary self. So here, the work of the... And I will do a demonstration, okay? To get a sense of how it looks like. All right. Yes?
But it's a dynamic process. So the primary self changes.
The primary self does not change. I have many different primary selves. So if I am, let's say, an intellectual, that's my primary self. That doesn't change.
But over time, I may become more emotional by digging into my disowned self, and I may bring some of that and put it into my primary self.
No. The intellectual self stays intellectual, always. if you access some of your emotionality, what you have now is integration. You can integrate the two. So
An
sometimes
integration or a balance?
integration creates balance. Integration, when you integrate them, there's more chance of a balance.
Okay.
But the intellectual always will stay. You see, there are some other techniques, the Gestalt method, where they have two cells talking to each other. We don't do this here. We honor and respect the selves as they are, because they had a reason to be who they are. We don't change them. We don't change them. We just move, we separate, and we honor their gifts and their limitations, but we don't change them. Anyway, they don't change. It's beyond us. We don't change them, and we don't have them talk to each other so they can make agreements or anything. So what you do is you develop the aware ego process. You develop a relationship. So now I can talk to my independent, and I can talk to my needy. And like you said, an integration. So I look different, but it's not because I can be I can be an independent or a responsible in a minute. But because I'm aware of the other side, I integrate it. And I have a more integrated life that is more balanced, is walking on both feet now. Yeah.
So there's another self that's of a higher level, the ego, the aware ego, is that what you call it?
Aware
the
ego
one
process.
that makes these decisions and that says, okay, this is a primary self and this is the dissonant self, and let's balance a little bit, or so that there's so the part that does the integration, it's like you're talking about a higher level self. Or an
Well,
ego
I don't want to. I don't want to put it higher level. Yeah, this here sees. It has a better view of the whole landscape.
Bravo. Which is the part that sees all this?
The aware ego process.
The aware ego process.
When you move in the middle, when you and I'm not dominated by a primary self. I see the primary self. It's an energy. You see, intellectually you're trying to understand it now, and it's not going to work. Intellectually you cannot understand this. I'm telling you. It's so hard to, and it's very hard for me to present this because I'm presenting something that happens energetic in an intellectual way. It's very hard for me. It took years to be able to even put together this presentation. It's hard. But the psychology of the cells is the intellectual theory that the method is based on. You need a body of theory to make sense. Otherwise, it won't. You see? So what happens energetically, you separate and you become in the middle, and then this part here, this part, the aware ego process, you see, it's not a place you go, it's a process, which is very different. It's a process because here I'm in constant move. And decisions in this place, once you make a decision from the aware ego process, that means I listen to the responsible and I listen to the irresponsible. And I stay. And I stay. And I stay until it becomes clear. So nobody, and the aware ego process talks to the responsible. Okay, we have to do this. I know you want to do this. I know you don't want to do anything. All right, let's stay with it. And decisions take much longer. And if your primary self is a pusher that wants things done like this, you won't have patience enough to do this. So this is what I think. I don't know what time is it. What time is it? 12:30?
Yes.
12:30. Okay. So I think it's better to do a demonstration. So to see how, when we do demonstrations, please don't ask questions, don't make any comments, because it's almost like a trance that you go into when I work with a person, me and the person. Okay? So then at the end of the demonstration, we will open it for questions. All right? Then the voice dialogue, we start with the person, let's say, and then you actually move to different place. So you take the chair and you move it So I honor, let's say, whoever wants to talk, that now I'm just talking to them. So Yolanda is here, but now I'm talking to the responsible part of Yolanda. We isolate it. So the person, the self, the primary self, comes and talks to us. And then after we hear the history, why they came about, how are they helping the person, we're moving back here. Now, when I work, I might do 2-3 hours, a few weeks or months, just the primary self before I go to the disowned self. Because like you said, what you experience, like, oh, wow, what you want me to do? We have to get the permission of the primary self. They have to feel heard, understood, and seen, and not judged. So if I am in a primary self as a facilitator, they won't come out. They need to feel safe. You see, that's why the facilitator has to do a lot of work on themselves first. You know, so if I get a needy primary self, I don't, show how I dislike them, you see. So then, so they move the chair and then they move back, and now there is a aware ego process happening between here and here. Now they know there's a difference because you feel the difference in your body. You actually do. It feels different when you move back. And then, if I had chance, more time and all that, I will do the disowned self. But let's see how it goes, all right? So we'll have 2 chairs. We'll have here. Yeah, so you'll be able to see both of us. Costi, you want to come? Do a demonstration? Okay. All right, so we'll do a few minutes of this. It's 12:30, you said?
Yeah.
12:30? Okay. So we'll do a few minutes and then we'll get questions, all right? Okay. Ah, good. I'll sit down. I'm tired standing up with these high heels. Actually, I'm going to take off my shoes. How's the workshop so far for you?
Very rich.
Oh yeah, that's good. That's good. Is something that you heard that it's kind of adding being a therapist yourself?
A lot, I would say, but I need maybe some time to digest.
Yeah, that's what it is.
And to integrate.
Yeah.
It's another story.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, yeah. So in your practice, right? What do you think it's the focus? It's your practice.
The first thing that comes to my mind is that the dialogue among the 2 selves, or the just facilitation. So I tend to use the dialogue of the different voices, internal voices or internal parts.
So you have a therapist?
Yes.
Okay. So can I speak to the therapist? Okay. So tune into him, and he needs to decide where you want to sit. You want to stand, you want to move over, you want to sit on the couch, wherever he wants to sit, but I want you to shift so I can speak to him directly. Where does he want to go? The therapist.
Where does he want?
Yeah.
Here?
Yes, here. I want him to change. I want to speak to your therapist directly. Because he started talking to me, but I want to recognize him as the therapist. So where does he want to shift the chair?
Usually I avoid sitting in front.
Yes.
But I tend to
sit like that.
Yes.
Okay. Hello.
Hi.
So you are, Costi is here, and you are the one that does therapy with clients.
I try to.
You try to. That's right. You try to. Okay. So what else do you do? I mean, how do you function in Costi?
How do I function as a therapist?
Yes.
How do I
yes.
function?
Yes. In Costi.
I think the first priority is to help the client feel as comfortable and as safe as possible, and so that he or she can trust me and open up.
Okay. So how does that help Gusti?
Uh,
How does it protect him?
like, let me first ask the help. It may helps me by making me feel useful.
That's right. Beautiful. Okay?
This
So
is very
by-
important for
That's right.
Costis.
That's right. To feel useful.
Of course.
Okay. So you, by making other people feel comfortable so they open up, this function makes, because this protects him in terms of he feels useful. Okay, that's what you bring to him. Yeah. And how much do you, I want to know actually, I'm very curious, when were you born in him?
Very good question. Quite early, I would say.
That's right. How old was he when you were born?
I don't remember exactly, but I think it relates with my trying to...
With his?
Yes, with his trying to kind of mediate among the parents. As an adolescent.
Yes, okay.
Or maybe earlier, I don't remember.
Yeah, yeah. So, so when the parents were having some conflict, you realized that if you came in to mediate, it made things better.
I guess so.
How did that help Kosti when he was young, teenager, let's say, you came in when he was teenager? How did you making the parents' conflict a bit maybe resolve or a bit easier, or smoothing it out, how did that help Kosti?
Feeling more safe.
That's right.
That was very important.
That's right. So that's one function that caused your birth.
Yes.
By you learning to smooth things out, made him safe as a young boy.
And more relaxed and more comfortable.
That's right. So this ability to smooth, to kind of read people, how did you do it? Like, how did you do it when he was young, like that in the beginning?
I think intuitively, feeling the climate, feeling the tension, feeling the heavy silence.
So you come in, and how did you do it? How did you do it? Did you talk to them? How did you do it? I'm just curious.
By the role of the pleaser. I was doing something to please, and to please both of them.
And that calmed them down.
Yeah, I think yes, because I had the role of the golden and good child. So.
Of course. Yeah. Okay, so that's when you were born. And when did you decide to make that his occupation?
I think when I was 16, 17.
He was 16?
Yes, he was 16, 17.
Really?
I think yes.
What did you tell him? Do you remember how it started to be a therapist?
I don't remember, but what comes to my mind is that in the 5th or 6th class of the gymnasium, I wrote an article that knowledge is the power, and the more powerful is the internal knowledge, and to be able to know yourself and to know psychology, something like this.
He got praise from the teacher?
I think it was
positively.
So would you say, what's the percentage of time you are with him during the day? You take over during the day?
I told you now, I mean, recently much less than, let's say, a few years ago.
Okay.
But still, even the tendency to evaluate.
That's right.
When I hear something, when he hears something, I tend to come in and evaluate and think as psychologist.
Yeah.
It's quite dominant.
Who do you think sits on the other side of you?
The amuser, the easygoing, yes, he humorous.
That's right. So he doesn't think and analyze too much.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay.
That's why I wrote on the other side, the humorous, the easygoing.
Oh, that's what he wrote? That's what, oh, you were
Yeah,
writing it? Or you were writing the answers?
Well, Costi was writing, but I
You
wasn't
were-
aware that
yeah.
the psychologists they were agreeing on.
Of course. Great. Fantastic. Okay.
And on the lower side, I wrote the what I don't like very much myself is the serious, tight kind.
Do you carry that?
Sometimes, yes.
You do. You become
That's why
quite serious.
I envy the people that are more humorous and more easygoing.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Because
So
I don't need to know what this may mean.
that's you.
And the psychology.
That's you. That's you. Yeah. Yeah. How do you think his life would have been if you never came in?
Difficult question. How
I
could
know.
I?
How would his life been different if you, the deep thinker, the
Ah.
analyzing was not there, the evaluating was not there?
In the first place, if he had avoided to play this role of the mediator among the parents, and identified with one of them, that would be one would be more towards egocentric, and the other more towards generous and more towards giving and see.
So you, by interfering, helped him become more balanced and not go to either of these
Yes,
extremes?
I think
Okay.
that's why balance for me is still a value.
Yeah, okay. So you carry that.
I try to.
You carry that very much so. Okay. But so what percentage do you think your presence is in his life every day?
I told you now, much less, but maybe 50%.
Only?
Before it was much more.
You think now it's only 50?
This is, or maybe that's the percentage I would like.
That's right. That's right. I think
Wishful
so.
thinking.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's more like
Because it's not easy always to be aware that now I'm playing the psychologist. So it's.
But feel into your body this moment, how it feels immediately. Did you see? Yeah. 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 The finger
well,
goes up, and the eyes open because the thinking is there. So you're very, very visible when you're there. It's a immediately certain seriousness that is necessary for the clear thinking. And the intellect works and evaluation starts.
Yes.
And there's in the eyes. I mean, yeah. So I think you're there a bit more. Maybe like 70%, I think. Maybe before it was 90%, I don't know. But yeah. Because speaking with him, met him a few days and all that. I've seen you quite often, even while drinking coffee. You came, yeah. And it's wonderful to be with you because it's a feeling of you take in. Like when I talk, I see you. You take in what I say. You listen very well. That's a gift you give him. And listening is necessary to analyze things. Yeah. Great. Thank you very much. Let me go back to Kosti.
Shall I tell
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, a little more.
Close.
No, this way. Okay, a little more. No, your chair this way.
Ah, like.
Yeah, bravo.
Okay.
Yeah. So I want you to separate from him, Kosti, energetically.
Go back to the
Separate.
psychologist was sitting.
Yes. I want you, Kosti, to have the psychologist sit there, and I want to talk to Kosti now.
Okay.
Alright? Not Kostaki, Kosti. Okay? So just separate energetically, have him sit there. A little more. And just connect with me. Good. Good. Okay. How, if any, how does it feel different sitting here from sitting there? But I want Kosti to tell me. I don't want him to tell me.
The first, how does it feel, or what reflections do I have?
No, you see, so he's still here because he's talking about reflections. So have him separate a bit more. We're not going to think clearly. Thinking is not important right this moment. Just sensation, not emotion, sensation, your body.
I would say more relaxed.
That's right.
More relaxed.
From here.
Dear compared, yes.
Okay. So from here, Kosti, do you see his gifts?
The gifts.
No, he's here now. Okay, he's here because he's thinking.
Mm.
Immediately the eyes go to the one side and they open up. Right? So let him stay there. Okay? I don't want you to think about too much because he's coming in. The minute you start thinking, boom, he's there. Okay? So what do you think is good about him from here?
Giving, supporting.
That's right. That's right. That's right. What are some of his limitations?
Not as relaxed as.
That's right. That's it. That's it. That's right.
He has to be alert.
That's right.
All the time.
He has to be on all the time. That's his only limitation, and it's tiring. At times, it gets tiring.
If it takes a long time.
Yeah, because he said not only in your office he comes
Yes.
with paid clients.
Overtime. A lot of overtime.
Overtime, but he doesn't get paid.
Yeah.
So yeah. So that's his only limitation. Is that when he comes, he's on. There's a certain focus, right?
Maybe that's why Kostis likes so much singing. Because
That's it.
it's one way to silence the psychologist.
You got it. You got it. That's exactly right. Because in the music, you cannot be like this. I mean, it's a focus, of course, but it's a different focus.
Yes,
and it's an expression.
It's feelings.
It's emotions, it's feelings, it's expression here, and it's giving in a very different way.
Mm.
That's exactly right. So the singer, the part that goes and sings, is a disowned sound.
The fact that in the last few years I introduced in my interventions
So you know,
songs.
he's here. You see, that's very interesting.
He, yes.
Yeah, he came.
All right. I see a kind of a tendency for integration now.
Oh, that's good. That's very good. Good try.
Because when I said singing, and then a voice came to me, but you're using songs. My trainees and they know about it, that I sometimes use in my work.
Beautiful. That's integration. That he starts, but he handles it.
Yes, he handles
He handles it. Okay? So it would be wonderful for the singer.
He borrowed it from Costino.
Okay, so ask him to move a little bit.
Stay.
Okay. Ask him to move, that's right, and just connect with me. You see, it's very dominant.
Yeah.
This is not 50%, right? Okay. Yeah. And he comes in. How did you know he came in? You see what happens when he comes in? It goes into calculating and thinking.
Yes.
And that's his beauty, and that's his strength. But sometimes
it's tiring.
It's tiring. That's it. That's it. You see? And I think the singer, now that you introduced the singer, I would be very curious to know if in front of your trainees, the singer comes in and he sings to them.
They can't help.
No, but sings to them a song, actual song.
To sing to them?
Yeah.
No, I refer to songs.
I know you refer to songs.
I say this phrase, like I refer to the phrase, to the song of Sabobu.
That's right. Okay? So he then talks about the singer.
Yes.
But when you sing, Kosti, the singer sings. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. So it will be interesting if the singer comes in front of your supervisees and sings to them.
In what sense sings?
Sings a song! Okay, you see his reaction? What? You see his reaction? And you see how it felt like?
And I had a nodding from a trainee. Encouragement.
So you see how it felt in your body? How did it feel in your body? Now that we said that.
Yes, it's in the beginning it was upset, but
That's right.
now I feel okay.
Because he is about presenting and ideas and suggestions and listening and giving encouragement and support, right? It's not about singing. You see what I'm saying? So the singer, to come in front of the trainees and sing,
It may be an enriching kind of
that's exactly right.
experience.
So he's here again. Ask him to move.
Okay.
Do you start sensing him when he comes in or no?
After you point out.
After I point out, do you sense it?
Yes.
Okay. And how do you sense him differently when he comes in after I point it out?
In feelings. What do you mean?
How do you know he comes in? You said after I pointed out. You know how I see him? He becomes serious.
Yes, serious and evaluative.
And serious and introspective.
Yes.
Okay?
Maybe, yes.
Okay.
Yes, I do, maybe sometimes.
That's right. That's right. He has a body language that is just for him. So thank God the singer is here to give you a little relaxation.
God save the singer.
Yes. But I have a warning for you. You have to be very careful that he doesn't start singing, because the singing will lose the halarosi. it will lose the joy. And then he will start making it a chore and a serious business. And now it has to be done right.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I was off key. You know what I mean? Because he's very good at his work and he's very loyal at his work. You see? So if the singing is fun,
Yes.
is spontaneous,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to think. But if he now starts getting involved in your singing, you will not enjoy the singing as much.
Definitely.
It will become another thing to do if it falls in his hands.
It will be another thinking too.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. We will open it to the audience now, okay? Okay. All right. So if I had more time, I would invite the singer to come. And if I invited the singer, chances are he will sing for us.
Do you know the song that came to me? Μη μιλάς άλλο για αγάπη, αγάπη είναι παντού. Στην καρδιά μας, στη μάτια μας, τρώει τα χείλη, τρώει τα νου.
He didn't need an invitation.
There you go. There you go. You see?
He was too suppressed.
So you
3
see?
hours now.
Exactly. Enough already. That's right. So you see what happens when you honor the primary self and he's seen, he calms down and he doesn't have to be present all the time. That's what happens when you talk with someone and they actually listen to you and you feel heard. You calm down. It becomes like, and that's what happened here. He was seen, he was honored, but honestly honored, not just we're playing honored. You see, when a self, a primary self is seen and is honored, it calms down and it allows you to move. And then we get permission to go on the other side. So this is not just intellectual, this is actually, you felt it in your body. And it was so obvious, when he came in. So the whole goal is so that you catch the primary self coming in. That's the whole idea. And then you decide, not the primary self, you decide, is he necessary? Does he need to be here? Because there's nothing wrong with the psychologist. He earns your living. He made a living for you, you see? And that's the way he functions. But now you're semi-retired, no? Aren't you retired?
Already officially retired.
But he didn't. He didn't retire at all. You see what I mean? So the danger now is that he comes in your retirement, let's say, and starts thinking things more seriously and taking things. Then it will not feel like a retirement at all. Where it's some freedom and some free time. And pockets of time that you do nothing. Non-productive. You see, the pushers in us, if you are non-productive, they go berserk. They freak out. If there are any pockets in your calendar that are empty, they freak out. They have to fill everything up. So don't get confused that the singer or the retirement will have him calm down. He won't. He will come to them. So the whole goal here, if I had more time to work with him, is that again and again we would facilitate the psychologist. So he knows when he comes in. I sense him coming. But the goal is for you to sense him coming.
Yes, this is.
Yes.
Is it easy to separate the psychologists and ghostees? They grow up together.
That's the work. That's why I'm saying it takes a year or more. No, it's not. At all. So when I said to you, just at least know your primary self, Just knowing, identifying, it's the beginning. But to energetically separate and for him to notice when he comes in, it will take time. It will take, because exactly what you said, they grew up all these years. And your primary selves have been your identity. This is how you see yourself. If I say to you, tell me a little bit about yourself, you will describe your primary self to me. So the whole idea of this is you're more than meets the eye. And if you don't open up to the other side, you're missing out. That's basically it. And you get into conflict more easily and judgment more easily because you're stuck in right and wrong. Any other questions or comments? So I take it everything is clear. All right, I don't know about the time, but I have nothing else to say. I thank you for coming. And thank you. This was great. This was a great learning. I don't know about you, but for me it was great. Thank you. That's it. Hello, please, if you like to receive my newsletter, write your name and your email.